Live from deep in an underground bunker in East Tennessee, this is America's premier mortgage field services expert, Paul Williams.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of Foreclosurepedia Podcast. Foreclosurepedia Podcast is a presentation of the Foreclosurepedia Radio Network, which premieres each weekend. I'd like to give a special shout-out in this second hour to CT Property Management. That's Chad Benoit up in Maine. Appreciate him sponsoring this hour's portion of the Foreclosurepedia Podcast. You know, what has been on everybody's mind here lately is the simple and salient fact that Craig Karnes, with his recent promotion up in Atlanta to the Assistant Chief Procurement Officer for Field Operations within the office of the Chief Procurement Officer. So technically, I guess he's the Assistant Chief. You know, back in September, I brought up some issues that I felt were pretty serious. And, you know, we've been attacking for months now the simple fact that, in my opinion, Mitch Davidson was involved in federal collusion. And that deals with market ready, the writing of the contracts at market ready, that he denies he wrote, and yet the former chief operating officer said point blank he wrote them, and he also wrote Purdy Enterprises, HUD, M&M, FSM 3.10 contracts. Neither here nor there. And I'd asked Karnes, and I said, you know, it strikes me that you and Mitch Davidson have much of a cozy relationship. And Karnes said, and I'm going to quote here, I'm not sure if I'd characterize Davidson and BLM as, quote, friends, end quote. Since Davidson more or less forced his old company into the PHOC areas by means of protest and then ended up leaving for Purdy. However, I don't know what has transpired behind the scenes since then. As fate should have it, there is a draft PHOC area FSM OIG report that will go final in the near future, which I think you will find enjoyable. You know, I want to be really clear here on something, Mr. Karnes, and for the Foreclosurepedia Nation. I don't find a goddamn thing enjoyable about the defraudment of U.S. taxpayers, of whom I'm fucking one. I don't get any enjoyment out of that. So let's be real clear on that. You knew BLM had problems, Mr. Karnes. And your protege, who's parading around as an acting director, Kimberlee Satterfield, she sure in the fuck knows there's problems down there too. Maybe she finds it enjoyable, I don't know, but I don't. Nor do I find the defraudment of U.S. taxpayers to be humorous. But then again, I don't work for Secretary Ben Carson, do I? You know, there's a big problem, Mr. Karnes. There's a big problem because myself and Richard Law, who runs the Society of Field Inspectors, Sophie, been around 30 years, you might have heard of him. We both brought a problem to Secretary Ben Carson. We said, you know what? For 30 years, all of the locks on post-conveyance properties, which are FHA-insured foreclosures that HUD owns and controls, those key codes, those HUD master key codes have been compromised. And in fact, Mr. Karnes, you've known about it. You've known about it for at least a decade. And you did nothing. You did nothing until Mr. Law and myself sent a letter to Secretary Carson's personal residence in Vienna, Virginia. And then what did you do? You changed some key codes. Now, you knew that NAMPS members, that's the National Association of Mortgage Field Services regime, ran by Eric Miller. You knew, you had foreknowledge, you had written communications, you knew that NAMPS members were publishing in the clear the HUD master key codes with specificity to property addresses, but you also knew, Mr. Karnes and Mr. Carson and Miss Satterfield, you also knew that NAMP's regime members were selling those master HUD key codes, the keys themselves, for $1 each. And what did you do? Why, you did nothing. You changed some of the lock codes around. And here I had to send you yet another letter wherein I instructed you that your very same new HUD master key codes are for sale at U.S. Hardware instead of MFS Supply now. Your very same solution, which solved nothing other than providing a financial windfall to these financial terrorists that you continue to award contracts. I say to you, Mr. Karnes, Mrs. Satterfield, Mr. Carson, because Mr. Carson, you do not even deserve the respect of the title as HUD Secretary. And as a doctor, I don't know. Perhaps you dabble with a little child brainstem ganglioma. Civil affairs you obviously do not know a fucking thing about. I have forgotten more, Mr. Carson, about HUD than you will ever learn. So now we have $1 million+ when we include the dispatching of the federal agents to verify what we brought forward to you, to cause the new locks to be put into play at all times. Labor has not made a penny. In fact, they have shouldered the brunt of your fuck up, Mr. Karnes. How you still have a job is beyond me. I do not know if perhaps your friend, Mr. Bravacos, who was on the Trump team, the Trump landing team, bringing HUD in underneath his administration, certainly did not make the beachhead team cut. I do not know who is getting the payoffs, the rip-offs, and the things nobody's talking about. But if you're not getting them, Mr. Karnes, you sure in the fuck should be. You have single-handedly decimated. You have decimated and destroyed any last shred of respect that U.S. taxpayers ever might have had for you. And for HUD, well, it's business as usual. You know, we're going to walk everybody step by step through precisely how easy it is to identify these HUD properties, precisely what the HUD key codes are. And we wrote you that letter, Mr. Karnes. You had the ability to demonstrate to me that if you did not want me to publicize the simple and salient fact that you, sir, not me, you, sir, made information available and accessible to the criminals within the United States, within organized crime internationally, to come and to molest, to rape without a reach around the U.S. taxpayer. You, sir, are guilty. It is high time that somebody within HUD remove you. That is the reality. My tax dollars are squandered when they continue to finance your malfeasance. Myself and others had presented a very simple solution to this problem. But the problem was that solution wouldn't line your and Satterfield's pockets, and it sure in the fuck wouldn't help your buddies at Enocean. I ask you this. How do I know what the master HUD key codes are? And how was I able to go and track them down on the internet? And how was I able to purchase those HUD key codes from a NAMFS member? How? Because of your incompetence. Any other vocation on earth that this much incompetence was present in for such a long period of time would have resulted in a person's removal from that position. Now, China speaks volumes on how they handle their problems, and perhaps the United States ought to visit that at some point. But that is not my job. My job is to point out precisely where we are at today. And while everybody else is terrified of you and Ben Carson and Kimberlee Satterfield, who migrates from Chicago down to Atlanta on that typical fucking red eye, dishing out what she believes should be her expedience to make people bow down to her, it's not going to fucking happen on my watch. We'll be right back after this from a word from our sponsors. So when we talk about just how easy it is that Craig Karnes, Atlanta HUD, and Kimberlee Satterfield, who's the acting director, remember the very same acting director that within only a couple of weeks on the job had to take a vacation. When we talk about how easy it that these two miscreants have made it to steal from the U.S. taxpayer, go no further than their website. Look, this website is owned and operated by HUD. It's backed. Look, this whole program is put together and overseen by HUD Secretary Ben Carson. Here's a beautiful map right in here. Hey, look, if you don't speak English, si habla español. Hey, no problem. But let's drill down just a little bit. Let's concentrate on the state of Illinois. See, that's where Notion Enterprises. That's Amos Alexander and Al Espinoza. Everybody remembers the Amos and Al show. And why do we remember it? Because Craig Karnes himself ensured that BLM companies got a waiver to use Notion Enterprises employees on their multitude of awards. Now, I don't know if Craig Karnes received a bribe or not, but if he didn't, he sure in the fuck should have. Because the entirety of that contract, those multitudes of contracts, those hundreds of millions of dollars that were sucked into the black hole that we call HUD today, that was because of Craig Karnes, and he allowed it to go on. Today, Craig Karnes is allowing Notion Enterprises to get dozens of initial services and tons of other issues with the M&M. It's the management marketing contract specific to the field service manager. These issues are being pointed out by Alpine Company's First Preston. They are the asset manager over Illinois. Now, Karnes, by contract, is supposed to ensure that $50 a day per occurrence fines are levied against these prime vendors, of which Notion Enterprises is one, when these issues happen. These fines are not being enforced. In fact, what Craig Karnes and Kimberlee Satterfield have done is given PK Management $500,000, well over $600,000, to assist Notion Enterprises to continue their clusterfuck in the states of Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama. And if you want to know who's really a good friend of Notion Enterprises, go no further than Mitch Davidson. Look, he wrote the contract for Purdy Enterprise while he was at Market Ready, who had submitted their fraudulent contract. Remember, they couldn't accept the contract because they couldn't prove that they were legally a small business. Mitch Davidson's very good close personal friends with Craig Karnes. Mitch Davidson did work directly with and for InOcean Enterprises while he was employed by Market Ready. I mean, where do we go? But look, I just want to show you how this works. So here we have properties. And we actually have 10 pages of these properties. Now, I took the liberty, because you can see how much money they're asking on these. That number came up to $7,420,348. So I want you to think about that for just a moment. So here, you can simply go select what property. If you're a criminal, what property do you want to break into? When do you want to break into it? And look, I love HUD, and I really love how Craig Karnes and Kimberlee Satterfield have allowed this program to get underway. Excuse me. Because look, I know a lot of criminals out there are really busy, and so you really need to plan your criminality. See, so here we can get the drive with direction. I mean, shoot. So here we got a property we can target. Look, I want to check it out. I want to know what's going on. So HUD facilitates this. They'll allow us to get a good view what's going on. Oh, hey, look, this looks pretty vacant here. Children of the corn maybe, but that aside, because we know HUD doesn't care. So we go right back here. This is where we're at today. Look, hey, maybe, you're out there doing crimes because, that's what you do for a living. And, hey, look, you want to zoom in here and you want to see, hey, look, we could break into these 4 homes right here in Freeport. And, well, look, you can zoom right in, pick somewhere to have lunch. Nice. Maybe there's a mission. I mean, hey, I'm not putting anybody down here. I'm just, socioeconomically deprived, challenged, because this, look right here, this is obviously what HUD wants to facilitate. This is precisely how horrific it is. I went ahead and took the liberty of pulling up a property. Now, as you can see, because I know a lot of people are worried, a lot of you criminals out there, because, your friends might get the jump on you. But here you can see we have a wide open driveway. Look, we can facilitate multiple criminals. Look, we can get all 5 boroughs. All of the heads of the family involved in this. I mean, look at this. Very wide open. Well kept. I gotta give credit to lawn. But look, we can probably get 5 or 6 trucks in there. And so here, look, big backyard, quiet, nondescript. We get excellent shots of the home. But let's see, what's on the menu here. Oh, I got a built-in oven, built-in microwave. We have everything. Look at this. Hey, that insert's got to be worth a couple of grand. Look here, built-in speakers. Hey! This is a high-end home. Actually, because, I'm sure criminals from time to time, they get a little hard-pressed, having to pull those BPOs and comps. But look, HUD does your work for you. $333,000 valuation tells you when it's built, whole 9 yards. Now, I also know that a lot of these criminals from time to time, they're kind of concerned that, look, I got to whack a dude and, I got to fit the old lady into the schedule. It might be after dark. So, hey, they're going to tell you, look right here, the utilities are on. And I know some of you criminals, those joints they're getting old and achy. But look, the HVAC is on. It's working. It's working. And just in case, right after you whacked that dude and you had some great linguine, we know the water supply is on. It's pressure tested. It's working. Forget about it. This is what I'm driving at, ladies and gentlemen. But look, HUD even goes a step further. I want you to look right here. Housing and Urban Development Secretary Ben Carson. Hell, pick a property. Where do you want to go? Worry about what step it's in? There it is. You want the exact address? Maybe for some reason, I know some of you criminals, you're all worried. Yeah, I'm with you. Don't want to get that racist tag, so you can break it down by the Phipps and the census tract. You can target the big, bad, white person out there. I'm with you. I understand. I feel your pain. Forget about it. So look, Champaign, Illinois, maybe a quick jaunt over here to Lafayette. Come on back. Hell, let's pick one right here. Where are we at? Look at this. It's going to break everything down for you. It's going to tell you precisely how many people are in this area. It's going to give you, and I know a lot of you like to, and as you remember, we go right back here. We click the view map option. You can import this, by the way, into any type of Garmin, any type of GPS you're using out there. So you click this and you say, hey, I got this. But look, sometimes these are strange addresses. I know, the government, silly government, they really ought to do this better for us. But look, we can break it down with the latitude and longitude. See, that's your government working for you. That's right. We'll be right back after this from a word from our sponsor. Here's the sad thing. Those keys that we just discussed in our previous segment, they are all available at ushardwaresupply.com. Now, to show you how far in advance that they knew, and to show you how NAMPS members at every step of the gate are out to fuck everybody, I'm not going to point them out directly what they are, but I'm going to tell you what. You can find them along in here. And the ones that are specific in nature that you want to pay attention to are the ones at $1.25. Now, the regular ones that we use on a daily basis, those are 99 cents. So that's half your game. But US Hardware has them. They're a NAMPS member. Craig Karnes, Kimberlee Satterfield, and Secretary Ben Carson knows that they are up there and on display. And for the state of Illinois, I'm going to tell you this. Folks. The cat's out of the bag. And for the rest of the areas in HUD, for each one of those HOCs that they've taken months to even roll this bullshit program out with, all those numbers for the HUD master key codes are out there as well if you look hard enough for them. And that is bullshit. Craig Karnes is directly responsible for this. I don't give a fuck how incompetent Kimberlee Satterfield is, which in my humble opinion, she's a doormat. That's the reality. Craig Karnes held that office for years. I engaged him, as did others, and warned him about these problems, and he did nothing. In fact, until he was forced by Secretary Ben Carson to take action, he didn't do anything. And even now, what he has done is absolutely nothing. And going back fundamentally, as we showed you all earlier, the map is there, the routing is there, the pictures are there. This is a wholesale rape of U.S. taxpayers, and it's brought to you by Craig Karnes. Somebody ought to ask. Somebody really ought to ask about that Harley Davidson that he drives, because I'm going to tell you what HD stands for. Any part you go buy, that stands for $100. And I guarantee you, in my opinion, you drill down enough on his bank account, you drill down enough on Satterfield's bank account, if HUD, check this out. So as a U.S. taxpayer, myself and everybody is legally allowed to know what these people are paid. They said, file FOIA. I filed FOIA, and FOIA says, you got to pay us money. HUD, you must pay us money for us to tell you how much Your tax dollars are paying these government civil servants. Fuck that. HUD is off the chain. It's out of control. We have an incompetent imbecile running it. Ladies and gentlemen, I need your help. Our nation needs your help. If ever there was a time to donate to Foreclosurepedia, the time is now. We are submitting FOIA on a daily basis against these crooks. And we don't have the money to continue to do this with purely volunteers. We need your help. Whether you click the subscribe button, become an industry subscriber, become an industry insider, however you do it, click that button on our website today. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to fear Donald Trump. Whom you need to fear is Craig Karnes. And I thank you. We're going to have two people. We're going to get into the third hour here. We're going to sit down. We're going to interview. We're going to talk about the madness that this machine that we call HUD has become. We're going to talk about the criminality in Atlanta. We're going to talk about each and every occasion that Craig Karnes has specifically been made aware of criminality, and he has purposefully, in my opinion, attempted to bury it. We're going to get into the Billy Masonette case, a Puerto Rican owed over $100,000 by Craig Karnes' friends, Dave and Carolyn Ramagos. Those are the same people who went to the bars and the clubs with Mickey Snow. Mickey Snow, the man who raped two minor females whom were handicapped. Mickey Snow, the man who had committed arson, a felony, to begin to bankroll his industry. You don't want to miss it. We'll be right back in a moment.